Hello and welcome to Asia Newsweek. I'm Yvonne Yong. I'll bring you the top stories in the region and to go beyond the headlines for a deeper look at Asia. Let's start in Sri Lanka. Anura Kumara Dissanayake has been named the island nation's new president, signalling a new direction for the country, with voters turning against the political old guard. Within days of the historic election, the left-leaning leader dissolved the 225-member parliament, where his party only holds 3 seats. It means the country will face a snap general election in November, almost a year ahead of schedule. South Asia correspondent Ellie Grounds filed this report from Colombo as the new president was being sworn in.
Sri Lanka's left celebrate their candidate's victory at the presidential office. Polls predicted they'd win, but the victory has still left them stunned.
I'm living in New Zealand since 2013 and I flew back to Sri Lanka just to cast my vote.
We want to greet our president. I'm waiting for it, to him come out.
This is the new president, Anura Dissanayake, taking the oath of office. A Marxist who began in student politics and laboured for decades to make it to the top. Wild scenes at his campaign headquarters last night. Mr Dissanayake was elected after a marathon vote count, lasting most of the weekend, ultimately beating both the incumbent president and the opposition leader.
We have been granted this responsibility and we are determined to make this a better country.
He is a long-time politician, but not a member of a privileged political clan. He has promised to fight corruption, tax the rich, and renegotiate a tough International Monetary Fund loan, wowing voters with charismatic speeches.
For more than 50 years, there's been no real option for change.
Here, there is joy and optimism that Mr Dissanayake will bring radical change. But the new president faces many challenges, turning these Sri Lankans' dream into a reality.
Chief of which, consigning the country's worst financial crisis to the past. Despite fragile economic growth, poverty has surged and food prices have soared. The economic crisis has brought political instability. President Dissanayake is the third leader since 2022, a history that suggests he will have to show results or else. Ellie Grounds, ABC News, Colombo.
For more on this, Sajini Vikramasinghe, attorney at law and founder of the Democracy and Governance Initiative of Sri Lanka, joins us from Colombo. Sajini, this election result signals a big shift from voters. What does it tell us about the state of the country's democracy?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me here. And what people wanted was a system change, and the elected president is quite different to the usual candidates that we come from the political dynasties and the elite families that we often see in Sri Lanka. And the people have voted for a diversion from that. And after the election, the election commissioner has announced that this was a very peaceful election and there was a peaceful transition of power. And the president has acknowledged that there are certain voter groups and electors that did not vote for him, and he's working towards obtaining their faith. I think overall it has been a positive shift, and we are looking forward to how the president and the party would function.
Well, just days after being sworn in, the president dissolved Parliament. Do you think this is a bold move? Why has he done this?
Well, constitutionally, he can dissolve after 2.5 years of Parliament being elected. So he has the power to do that. And also it is necessary because he cannot function without a Parliament that would support his policies, his laws and his mandates. So it is it's a necessary step for any president in Sri Lanka that the parliamentary election would follow soon after, or soon within that time gap after president being elected.
What changes are people in Sri Lanka hoping for under the new government? Are they hopeful the new president can achieve what he's promised amid these tough economic times?
Yes, I think the president has accepted in his last speech that looking at short-term economic stabilization is the priority, and they would be having conversations with the IMF. And so kind of balancing these economic challenges with the concessions and other welfare promises that they made would be a major hurdle for the party because they are more focused on the social welfare. So kind of supporting that will be a big challenge, but also there are a number of law reforms that the party and the president has promised, which involves some serious changes such as legalizing abortion, decriminalizing homosexuality, and some other lot of legal reforms. But there are reasons that these have been kind of stalled in Sri Lanka. There are different pressure groups, religious groups that kind of hold them. So because of that, another challenge the president would face would be kind of ensuring that he can balance these different voices and really actualize the promises that they made. And another hurdle would be really obtaining the majority at the parliamentary election, because otherwise they would face a lot of challenges in terms of really implementing what they promised. And also, given if we look at the presidential election, there's a bigger chance of having not obtaining a majority within the parliament. So in that sense, it would be interesting to see how these parties would align with each other to make coalition and how it would play out during the general election.
Fascinating to talk. Sajini, thanks for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thailand has become the first country in Southeast Asia to legalise same-sex marriage. The Marriage Equality Bill was passed by Parliament earlier this year and has now been endorsed by the country's king. The law will take effect in 120 days. It means the first weddings are expected to take place in January next year. Activists have hailed the law as a monumental step. China has test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. The missile carried a dummy warhead and its firing reignited security concerns in the region, with Australia, New Zealand and Fiji all criticising the test. However, the US Pentagon says it received advance notice about the launch.
We did receive some advance notification of this ICBM test, and we believe that was a good thing. That was a step in the right direction, and it does lead, to preventing any misperception or miscalculation. What we can do here from the department is continue to press for a more regularized bilateral notification arrangement when it comes to ballistic missile and space launches.
After more than 45 years on death row, a Japanese man has been acquitted of murder. A court in Shizuoka cleared the 88-year-old in a retrial of the 1966 murders of 4 people. The former boxer was accused of stabbing to death his former boss and family before burning down their home. The man is believed to have spent the world's longest time on death row. A court ordered his release and a retrial in 2014 amid doubts about the evidence. Macau is an international gambler's paradise with its glittering casinos attracting millions of visitors every year. The Chinese territory is home to the only legal casinos in China, thanks to the special one country, two systems rule. The local government's trying to diversify its industries, but is the chain of islands really ready to part with its gambling past? Here's Lachlan Bennett.
This is the casino capital of the world. Every year, billions of dollars are won and lost in its opulent gaming halls. The government relies on gaming for more than 80% of revenue.
And this addiction to gambling wasn't a huge concern, at least until Macau's luck ran out.
The number of tourists in Macau fell to virtually zero last month.
Macau's gaming revenue plunged 46%.
The streets in Macau at the moment are pretty quiet.
International travel bans during the pandemic crippled the casinos, and gambling revenues struggled to recover.
So some people want Macau to bet on a different future before it goes bust.
I'm Giselle from Macau. My whole childhood is like, oh, we're a gambling city, like everyone comes here for gambling.
Giselle thinks Macau has more to offer than games of chance. She left to study accounting in Australia, but she does want to return if there are career opportunities in new industries, like financial services. But reshaping Macau's economy won't be easy.
Gambling industry is very, very instilled in like everyone's mind. So it's really hard to like just having a great shift.
So how did Macau become a gambler's paradise?
Legal casinos started appearing in the 1850s, back when Macau was ruled by the Portuguese. When the colony was handed back to China in 1999, remaining restrictions were relaxed and the gambling industry boomed. Today, Macau has the only legal casinos in China. And that's because Macau, like Hong Kong, is a special administrative region under China's one country, two systems regime. So it has different laws to mainland China. But not everyone is happy that Macau went all in on gambling.
The local government has been calling diversification for not only after COVID, but for a decade. Only after COVID-19, we have a consensus. Macau people finally realize how fragile Macau is if it's only relied on only one industry.
So what is Macau going to do?
In 2023, the government launched its first diversification strategy. It targets 4 key industries: financial services, traditional Chinese medicine, high-tech and events tourism. The government will build infrastructure, launch university courses and try to attract foreign enterprises. Meanwhile, casinos will expand their non-gaming operations.
I think the government realized that it's not sustainable to rely on a single industry. So we're investing more in other industries so like they have the potential to grow. We're trying to do it gradually, obviously. We're not cutting off the gambling industry like immediately.
The strategy says diversification is the only way to solve deep-rooted conflicts and issues in Macau. Sam Hufei, who is tipped to become the next leader of Macau, decried the barbaric expansion of the gaming industry and its large negative impact on the city. But the Gambling Association says Macau cannot simply reduce the gaming industry and should maintain revenue to ensure the economy and residents are not negatively affected.
People also questioning the future of the gambling industry. To what extent the government want to downgrade the size of the casino, because there's a lot of local people working for the casino. So if they lose their job because of diversification, they don't have other skills. Some people can survive in the new era and some may be abandoned.
Macau will likely need to attract workers and investment from outside its borders, and it's going to face some fierce competition from other Asian cities.
Meanwhile, Beijing is cracking down on one of Macau's biggest earners, junkets. These organised tours bring high rollers to Macau, but the sector has been plagued by allegations of money laundering and illegal gambling. And in 2023, the man behind one of the biggest junket operations was sentenced to 18 years prison. So the push to diversify might not just be about economic stability.
Beijing don't want Macau as a central for money laundering, so they want to limit the size of casino industry.
So, can Macau pull it off?
Even though like right now it's still not a very significant difference, but I can see that they're trying to make that change to like ensure that Macau will not collapse. Maybe if they're investing more, I will have more opportunity there because like they need more people there. That's definitely actually one of the big factors why I would decide to go back. So I would like give it a shot.
China's announced a housing rescue package aimed at helping the slump in the real estate market and boosting the country's sagging economy. In recent months, some of the biggest property developers in the world's second largest economy have either gone bust or been weighed down by huge debts. Reporter Bang Xiao is here to tell us more. So Bang, tell us a bit more about these stimulus measures announced by the government and why now?
Yes, Yvonne, it is a wide-ranging stimulus package with a strong focus on mobilizing capitals for industrial upgrades and property investment. What we can see is that the Central Bank of China has recently, 2 days ago, announced to cut the interest rate from 1.7% to 1.5%. 5%. At the same time, they also took a really step forward to lower its reserve requirement ratio by 50 basis points, which means that China is freeing up around 1 trillion Chinese yuan, which is about 200 billion Australian dollars for lending. This means that the government is really hoping the market can respond dramatically to boost people's confidence into investing into the industrial development as well as the property market. But some very unpopular announcement made by the government a couple of days ago is that the Chinese lawmakers has decided to raise its very famously low retirement age for men from 60 years old to 63 years old, and for women, based on which industry you work for, from 50 years old to 55, and from 55 to 58. This is apparently a measure that the government wants to save its huge pension deficits. But how does the public respond to it? This is very interesting to look at.
Well, what have Chinese citizens been saying? What has their reaction been?
Apparently for the property markets, people would argue that this is finally the measure the government has taken. But whether it is too late to come, it's still up to everyone to observe. But at the same time, when you look at the pension deficits, we found that it's interesting the Chinese public's confidence in the country's economic future is relevantly low. When you look at the youth unemployment rates, it's still up to about 18%. For younger generations, investing into the property markets and whether your lifelong saving would become nothing could be the first risk that they want to consider. So I would say, according to all of the social media discussions and people's response, we haven't seen anything that is effectively or dramatically changing the situation yet. And analysts have made the comment that the government's decision to make the measures to take place now is too small to have a positive effect on its economic headwinds.
Really interesting. Bang Xiao, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Yvonne.
North Korean defectors overcome huge odds to escape to a new life, free from Kim Jong-un's brutal regime. Many flee across the border with China, but there are fears that the increase in digital surveillance systems is making it increasingly likely defectors will be caught and sent back.
Separating China from North Korea, the Yalu River is where many defectors start a dangerous journey to freedom. Defectors like Shin Ju-yi, who says she fled for China in the 1990s, but eventually left for South Korea last year, fearing capture due to COVID-19 measures.
Those who had registered their fingerprints told me, "Sister, it was great that we could get the vaccines and get tested for COVID-19, but there's one big disadvantage. Now it's like we're in a fishing net. If North Korea tells China to catch and send us, we will be all sent back together."
So the Chinese government's official policy is that all North Korean escapees in their country are illegal economic migrants and not refugees or asylum seekers.
Defectors have long feared repatriation while living in China. They say new technology is making it harder to stay under the radar.
Surveillance has become more advanced with the collection of fingerprints, which didn't exist before. About 12 years ago, we could easily make fake IDs and use them just fine.
So the digital surveillance system in China is developing, and this includes not only the facial recognition system, but also the recognition of the walking patterns or the cell phones that they would use. So all this information feeds into the surveillance system that the Chinese authorities operate.
There are no official numbers on repatriations, but the Transitional Justice Working Group estimates 7 out of 10 North Korean defectors in China are caught and returned.
Since China is controlling defectors from North Korea in such a manner, China can demand something from North Korea that is beneficial to China.
More than 1,000 defectors reached South Korea in 2019. By 2021, that number was just 67. While it's picked up again as COVID restrictions have eased, it's nowhere near what it was. And with China's growing surveillance, some fear it never will be. Lauren Beldy, ABC News.
A zoo in Finland says it can no longer afford to keep a pair of Chinese giant pandas. Lumi and Piri were brought to the northern European country in 2018 as part of China's panda diplomacy. Due to the high cost of upkeep, the animals will soon be returned, more than 8 years earlier than originally agreed with Beijing. China has issued alerts about durian shipments from Thailand, saying they've been tainted with cadmium. Thailand has temporarily suspended exports from some companies while it investigates, but the Ministry for Agriculture says initial testing on Thai-grown produce shows that levels of the heavy metal are within normal limits. That's led to suggestions that contaminated fruit has come from a third country. Right now, the biggest band in the world, to 4-year-olds anyway, is The Wiggles. They've sold more than 30 million albums, had billions of streams, and the latest Wiggle to don the purple jumper is proudly Filipino-Australian. ABC Asia caught up with John Pearce and his mum to find out why sharing their culture with young music lovers is so important.
John Pearce, also known as the Purple Wiggle, and this is my mum.
The mum of the Wiggles.
You can introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Flor de Lisa Pearce. This is my son, Purple Wiggle.
You talk like a robot. This is my son. A lot of people are surprised to know that I have a Filipino mum that is hilarious and a lot of people can relate to. My mum's Filipino. Of course she's half my size. Of course she can't say hippopotamus.
What hippopotamus?
You know, introducing my mum through my social media platforms was a fun way to kind of showcase that I'm Filipino and I'm embracing my culture and that we actually genuinely had a great time filming it.
I like when I can make him laugh and he make me laugh too and we both laughing, so.
That was my mum's first feature in the paper. My mum was getting recognised and I think from that it kind of led to the next conversation of, because I'm in the Wiggles and we perform a lot of nursery rhymes, and I thought how interesting would it be to do a Filipino nursery rhyme. So I called my mum up and I said, what was that song you used to sing us when we were babies? And what did you say?
Bahay Kubo.
Bahay Kubo, kahit munti.
That's my favorite, to make them sleep or to make them calm down. Or.
And then I said, how does that go again? He's on the phone going, Bahay Kubo, da da da. And I said, okay, I'm going to learn this song so that I can sing it and record it with the Wiggles.
Here's a song from the Philippines that I learned from my mum.
What did you say at the start of the song?
Kumusta mga bata?
Ow!
Kumusta mga bata? This song is about a
small house with plenty vegetables. Vegetables. Bahay Kubo, kahit munti.
The song is about a small hut in a garden full of vegetables. And the way I see this is a lot of Filipinos aren't that well off. We didn't grow up with a lot. And I think that the big message with this is that money is not everything in this world. You can have wealth with nutrients and health. This is us here enjoying our summer.
That's
in our 1 by 1 meter pool, probably from Golo. When I look back, you know, my mum didn't really, you know, push the culture onto us and make us do, you know, traditional things.
When they're young, I did try to myself speak them Filipino, Tagalog, or sometimes mix Bisaya from Cebu, but because their dad is Australian, I feel it's difficult for me to like talk, and then I feel like too much like to do. And that time I'm starting to learn English as well, so I just stick to English. Now I seems to me they are interested to know what I come from and what the culture are. So it's important, yeah.
Come and learn some Tagalog with me. Kamusta ka? Which means, hello, how are you?
I guess, like, you know, we grew up in a small house. We didn't have much, you know, we had a 2-bedroom house with 6 of us here. And There's probably a lot on my mum's plate. I can imagine the difficulty it would be to try to teach just basic life skills than to learn another language. But I wish I learned it as a kid, as a child.
Yeah,
like I wish I did.
I realize now that I should like teach you when you're small.
It's not bad.
But
It's not bad.
I didn't know that you're gonna be one.
I would love it.
Yeah.
Well, everyone would love to speak multiple languages.
Yeah.
I think
Ay, nako.
Ay. It's just something you wish you did. When you're young, you don't see that, but when you're older, you really appreciate it if you did learn it.
Oh, when your baby come.
When my son's born, my mum will teach
I will
him
speak
Tagalog.
Yeah.
Or Bisaya.
Yeah, I will.
I would love my child to grow up with, a touch of everything. My wife's Italian, and I would love to bring that Filipino culture to him so he can understand, the Filipino culture, the Italian culture, living in Australia, just whatever we can kind of portray without forcing anything. I think that's fantastic, and I think they can learn a lot from it. And I think giving these opportunities to your children, you just give them options later in life. And I think you understand who you are as a person if you kind of get to know where you've come from too.
And that is the program. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.